Hi, my name is Shane Young with Bold Zebras. Today we're going to create a new Active Directory for us in Microsoft Azure. I'm going to use the new portal, but I will actually cover all three of the portals that I currently know about and how you can get to the latest one, just so we're all on the same page. A lot of confusion there. Hopefully, I'll use the latest portal and that'll kind of make everything stand the test of time. Also, all the stuff that we'll be doing will be done via the GUI instead of having to use PowerShell. So a lot of the techniques that I'm about to cover have been done before, but only via PowerShell, so hopefully this will be the first time you see how to do all these different things using the GUI. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to create two virtual machines using one virtual network and one resource group. We're also going to set up those virtual machines in an availability set, talk about what those are a little bit, and we'll make sure the VMs have static IPs. We're going to use our designated DNS server, and then we'll go do all the traditional things in Windows, configuring the AD settings and such. So should be a lot of fun. This video is not going to be part of a step-by-step series though. Instead, this will be part of my How Do I Do That in Microsoft Azure series. So just kind of little pocket videos that say, hey, here's how to go solve this task or that task. And then that way you can assemble the puzzle as you need. Cool? All right, let's get started. To get started, we're going to begin with the Azure Portal. So I want you to log into your Azure Portal. Now, for most people, you're going to see this, right? This is at portal.azure.com. This is the new bladed interface for diving in and working with our VMs. And so for this series, we're going to do all of our work from here. But real quick, just in case you're in a different Azure portal, I want to talk to you about where you're at and how to get here. So some people will find themselves in manage.windowsazure.com. This is actually the classic portal, aka the old portal. And so we don't want to do this. The main reason we need to not be in here is the features that we're going to use aren't available here. So to do some of the things that we're about to do through the GUI, you used to have to only be able to do through PowerShell. So that's a change. So if you have manage.windows.azure.com, you either can use the check out the new portal and launch the new portal here, or you can just manually type in portal.azure.com. All right, so we're going to close that because we don't want to mess with that. So the other one here looks exactly the same. Exact's probably the wrong word. Pretty close to the same. But you'll notice that there's a preview icon over here. And so this is actually ms.portal.azure.com. I actually have no explanation for how sometimes I get sent here and sometimes I don't. So the key, I think, is if you get sent here, is just go ahead and ignore it. So let's close out of that one as well. And we just want to navigate to portal.azure.com to do the video. Got it? Cool. Okay, then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create ourselves a new VM. So we're going to go to virtual machines, and when it comes up we'll see there's no virtual machines in mine, so we're going to click add. And then because we're going to be making Windows domain controllers, we want to do a Windows server, so we'll select that. And then over here you can see that we have choices between 2008 R2, 2012, 2012 R2. We're going to use 2012 R2, so we'll select that one. Now the good news is that the steps are pretty much exactly the same from a Windows point of view between 2012 and 2008, right? A little bit of difference, but mostly the same. So the Windows portion is not important. But the things that we need to do here inside of the Azure portal, like setting the DNS IP address and static IPs and that type of thing, that's going to be the same regardless of which one of these three you chose. So don't get too hung up on that decision, because what you want to learn is the same regardless of which one of these three makes the most sense for you. All right, so now we chose 2012 R2. Under a selected deployment model, we have the choices of Resource Manager or Classic. Right? Every time you see Classic, just think old. We don't want to mess with cold. We need the new hotness, so we're going to use Resource Manager. So click Create, and now it's going to prompt us for some basic information. So for name, I'm going to call it DC1. What type of VM disk do you want to use? SSDs or HDD, right? HDD being the old standard hard spinning slow guys. So we're going to go SSD for speed. You need to set yourself a name. So I'm going to use Shane. And then I have a complex password saved in my buffer here. You can use whatever you want here. Clearly you don't want to use Shane because you're probably not Shane. Not a lot of us in the world. But go ahead and use a username and a password that you can remember. And remember, this is accessible to the internet, so you don't want to be using passwords like "this is fun" or "let me in" or any of that type of stuff. You want to use a complex password. What subscription do you want to create this VM in? And then finally, a resource group. So we don't have one, so we're going to create a new one. We're going to call this DC_video. I always find out the hard way that they don't accept spaces and such here, so make sure you don't have any of those. And then you want to choose a location that is closest to you. East US is actually good for me. I'm here in Cincinnati, Ohio, so that's pretty close. So that all looks good. I'll click away. It turns blue, got a bunch of check marks. We can say OK. And before we move on though, I want to talk about resource groups just for a second. The idea of resource groups is really, it's just a way for you to bundle things inside of Azure so that way you can keep them all together. So for example, I'm making a video about creating domain controllers. So I'm going to put those in a resource group called DC Video. And so that way I can manage the security, the permissions, the locks, delete all that stuff, kind of use and operate with that as one unit. Also, from a consumption and cost standpoint, you can see how much resources, what is your spend for that particular resource group. So maybe you have, project for the marketing department and project for the HR department. You could have each one of those in its own resource group and be able to tell better what each group is spending with you. Okay? All right, so we're going to click OK. Now when choose a size comes up, it's going to offer me some recommended sizes. If you don't like what they're showing here, you could click View All. For this demo though, I'm going to go ahead and use a DS2 V2. So 2 cores and 7 gigs of RAM, probably a little overkill for a domain controller, but it makes the demo go a little faster, so we're going to spend the money here. So I'm going to hit select. Okay, so now it's going to start prompting me for things as it caches here. So the storage account we're actually not too concerned with, right? That's where all the VMs, hard drives are going to be stored. Are we going to keep all those in one account, have one per machine? There's a lot of decisions you have to make there when you're building out production. But for this demo, I'm just going to have one storage account with all my storage kept in there. Virtual network. This will be more important to us. So you want to make sure that you have a virtual network. You understand what it is, because when we create the second VM, you're going to want to choose this same virtual network. And then the settings we're going to make around static IPs and what DNS servers to use, that'll all be derived from this particular virtual network. So defaults there is good. Good. Network security group, same type of thing. We're going to put both of our VMs in the same network security group for the firewall settings. Another one is decisions as you're building out a production environment you might want to do, right? Do you need to have that HR and accounting group segmented in different network access groups? The resources need to work together. So security groups are going to help you with that. Extensions, we'll go ahead and click this to pop out the blade. So extensions are things that you can add to your Azure VM to get additional functionality. So click on Add Extension here. And so there's different ones here, right? Some of these are third-party ones, some of them cost money, some of them are free. For example, pretty much every VM you probably want to put the Microsoft anti-malware on, or maybe you're using some DevOps stuff, so you need desired state or Puppet or Chef or one of those. So extensions are a way for you to do more with your offering or with your VM, but for today I'm going to skip all of those because I don't need any of those to demonstrate what we're going to work through here. So I just close out of this and close out of this. The next decision point here is high availability, and availability set by default is none. We're going to click on that because we want to change it. So I'm going to click on Create New, and then we will just call this, I don't know, DC_video. We'll take all the other defaults, and so we'll say OK. And like that, we have an availability set of DC video. One of the key things about availability sets is it controls so that all the resources in a particular availability set aren't taken offline by Azure maintenance and such at the same time. So in our example, we're going to build 2 domain controllers, right? So we have some fault tolerance. So we're going to put both of those domain controllers into one availability set. And so then when Azure is smart enough, it knows when it's doing maintenances, that if it's going to do a maintenance, it's going to take down a VM, it's only going to take down one of those at a time, not both of them. So we should never be offline. So any tier in your deployment that has redundancy, so maybe you have 2 SharePoint web front-end servers, you've got 2 SQL servers doing some type of active passive. You always want to make sure that those 2 or more items are in the same availability set, so that way you don't have to worry about Azure things taking those offline, and it'll always try and keep one of those up at a time. Another important thing about availability sets is you can't change them after the fact. So this is a creation time decision that you need to make and understand the ramifications of. So for us, we're going to go ahead and create a new one, DC Video, and roll forward with that. And then the diagnostics, we're going to leave those enabled. And where's it going to store those? It's right here. So just pretty standard stuff. So we'll say OK. So now Azure's validating everything. It says Shane didn't mess up. Yay. So we'll click OK. And then now we'll be taken back to the dashboard, and you'll see that it's starting to build out our VM. So this is going to take 5 or 6 minutes. So I'll hit pause while that runs. Now I'll tell you before I've done, right, because we're going to build 2 VMs, before I've tried to do this video series, like kind of building 1 and 2 kind of back and forth, moving all nimbly bimbly between, gets really confusing. So instead what we're going to do to make it easier for you guys to watch is I'm just going to build out DC1 all the way to completion, and when all of it's done, then we'll spin up DC2 and add it to the domain to make it as easy as possible to learn. All right, so I'll hit pause and I'll see you in a second. So that took about 5 minutes, and once it finished, actually it brought us automatically over here to the settings for DC1. So you can see here DC1 virtual machines. So really the first thing we want to do is make a couple of quick changes on the network side. So we're going to click on network interfaces, and then we're going to click on DC1329. What a fancy name. And then it's going to pull across right for us all the settings, and we want to do 2 changes. So one is we're going to go to IP addresses. You can see it has a public IP, right? That's good. That's what we need so we can get to it. But it's also currently set to use a dynamic internal IP. And because this is going to be a domain controller, it's very important it's not a dynamic IP. So we're going to just say static, and we're going to take the defaults of 10.0.0.4, it's what it's currently running as, and hit save. It's pondering on that for us. There you go. So now we can close out of all of this. And just so you kind of know in the back of your head, it's not really important to know, but you know, we're used to setting static IPs, right, by going into a Windows machine and then saying properties, you know, and saying here's a static IP and kind of filling it all out, right, for the network adapter. What's actually happening here is Windows is still going to use DHCP, but now this network is going to automatically give a permanent lease for that IP address to that particular machine. So it'll always be using DHCP still, but it's just going to be getting the standard address. So that works out for us. We don't really care. We don't have to mess with it, but just in case you go poking around and wonder why you don't see a static IP at the Windows side. All right, so we'll close that. The other thing that I want to do real quick while we're in here is I'm going to go down here to Browse, and we're going to scroll to the bottom, and we want to go to Virtual Networks. So we now know that DC1's IP address is going to be 10.0.0.4, right? And so what we will also know is when we make it a domain controller, it'll become the DNS server for that domain controller, or for that domain. And so we want to go ahead and set all of that up now, so that way those settings are there when we get to it. So we're going to go ahead and click on DC Video, right, the virtual network. And so then over here on this pane, we've got DNS servers, or I guess Blade. So this Blade. And so we're going to say instead of using the Azure DNS servers, we want to use custom DNS. And so then we're going to use 10.0.0.4. And then just to save us from, oh, it's not bad, it's mad about that. Oh, because I left out a number. So we're going to use 10.0.0.4. Much better. And then when we create the second domain controller, right, for redundancy, we know it's going to be 10.0.0.5. So I'm going to go ahead and make that setting. Even though 10.0.0.5 doesn't exist right now, it's okay. It's not going to break anything in the short term, but gets it all set for us. Okay, so we'll hit save. And it's like, wait, it's not there. Because I left out the dot. Apparently I can't type today, folks. Sorry. So we'll try that again. We'll hit save, closing, 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 and closed. Okay, so now we'll go back to virtual machines, and there's our DC1, so we're going to click on him. And so now that we have all of the Azure pieces set up for it, we're going to jump over and configure that particular virtual machine. So we're going to say connect. That's going to download an RDP file for us. I'm going to hit save as, and I'm actually going to put it in a folder called C Azure, just to make it easy for me. So wherever you'd like to save them, so save that. And then now it's saved, I will hit open. A little pop-up dialog box says, hey, it's an unknown publisher. That's okay, we trust Microsoft, so click that and say connect. Then it's going to prompt us for credentials, and we're going to click more choices and use a different account. And so this is where we're going to enter the username and password that we typed in back when we were creating the VM, right? So I made my username Shane. I made the joke that none of you were named Shane, haha. And then my super secret password. So we'll say okay. And the reason I used a super secret password, unlike in the other videos where I told you the password, is because this is publicly accessible, right? You see my IP addresses. If I didn't do all this, you guys could get in there and pull shenanigans, and no one likes shenanigans, even cheeky shenanigans. All right, so it's saying, hey, DC1, we're connecting. We don't trust that certificate. Are you still cool? I am. So check the box to don't tell me again and click yes. So we'll expand that out so you can see. All right. It's like, hey, network 2, would you like to be able to connect to those devices? Well, yeah, why not? It's a work network, so say yes. And then now Server Manager is going to load up for us. If we click on configure this local server, normally you would kind of go in here and you'd start doing things like you might want to change your time zone, turn on the IE enhanced stuff, turn on the Windows error reporting. You'll also see that the Windows updates have already been applied. So if I went and checked for updates, those would be applied. There wouldn't be any put on there right now. A couple optional ones, but none of the security ones. That's nice. But you could configure your update settings here. And then, obviously it's in the work group domain, work group right now. So we're going to remedy that. So we're going to click on Manage. We're going to say Add Roles and Features. We're going to say Next. We're going to do it here, so next. And that looks good, so next. All right, so then here we want to select active, it's easy for me to say, Active Directory Domain Services. Check the box. And it says, hey, if you add that role, we're going to add these features for you. Well, that's good. Add those features. Click OK. Next, it's like, hey, any other features you want to put on? Nope, we just want the default, so next. And next. This is telling me all the things it's going to do. We don't need to check this restart box because we need to do something else before we reboot. So we're going to say install. And so this is going to run and take about 5 minutes. So while that 5 minutes happens, I'm going to hit pause. I'll see you in a second. Okay, so that just took a couple minutes. And now that it's done, we can close out. And then over here in Server Manager, we have the little arrow, or not arrow, warning sign. So if we click that, it says, hey, you need to promote this to a domain controller. Well, good. That's what I wanted to do. So I'm going to click the link. And so now it says, do you want to add a domain controller to existing domain, to an existing forest, or add a new forest? So for this video, we're going to add it to a new forest. And for the forest name, we're going to do contoso.com. I'm going to get rid of that capital C just because it's weird. And say next. Now, on that setting, right, for the root domain name, you would want to do whatever yours was, right? So if you were trying to do a video, or not video, if you were trying to, federate with your on-prem domain, or you're going to do some Azure AD stuff, right? You might want to have a domain you actually use. Contoso.com is just the one that we use for Microsoft demonstration purposes for about 1 million years now. So that's why I've chosen that one, but make your own decisions there if you need something a little more permanent. And I have no idea why that page takes so long, but it does. All right, so it's saying, hey, what forest functional level and stuff do you want? Well, we're going to do R2 because it's all new. And then it says, what password do you want to use for your to encrypt everything, so if you need to restore your Active Directory. So you want to use a complex password there, but you want to make sure you remember it. So I just used what I had in the clipboard. So we'll say next. It says, hey, we can't find a way to delegate or work with contoso.com. Do you still want to go forward? I do. So next. And so now it's checking. It says, all right, if you're using contoso.com, we're going to try and use Contoso as your NetBIOS name, but it wants to make sure there's no conflicts with that already on the domain. So like, for example, if I had a whole bunch of test domains or something, there could be a conflict, and then it would automatically name this Contoso1, which would be really confusing. So don't let that happen. Now, if you get anything other than the right name here, you probably should go back to the beginning and pick a better one. But Contoso works for me, so hit next. All right, so then now it says, hey, where do you want to store all the AD stuff? If I was building a real domain controller, I probably would go back to Azure and add an E drive, write another volume so I could have another disk set and put all that on there. But for this environment, putting everything on the C drive is going to be just fine. So hit next. It says, these are all the options. Are you happy with them? I am. So we'll say next. And so then now this is going to go out and make sure that all the prerequisites have been done. Everything's in place in order to make all of this fly. So this will run just for a minute or two. So we'll hit pause again. Okay. And so then now that the prereqs are all there, it's like, hey, make sure you've checked all these. We're not worried about any of this stuff. It's kind of doing some best practice checks if we're really building a production domain. But for what we're doing here, we're not worried about any of that stuff. So we're going to go ahead and click on install. Now this is going to run, and when it finishes, it's just automatically going to reboot this machine. So that is a little cumbersome, right? Because it's going to kill my remote desktop connection window. That's how I'll know when it's done. And then I'll just use my DC1 shortcut that we created earlier, right? this little guy right here that we downloaded. So when this finishes, I'll double click on that and we'll be able to get in. So I'll hit pause while that runs and I'll see you in a second. Okay, so you can see the remote desktop window disappeared, so that means the VM's rebooted. So we're just going to double click on DC1, and so now enter your credentials. Now here you want to hit more choices again and use a different account, because now we're not using the local account Shane anymore, right? We need to use Contoso Shane because that is our new account. And then we will put in our super secret password and click OK. And then it says, hey, you sure about that? I am, so yes. And then just like that, the remote desktop starts to connect. So we'll maximize that. It'll resize itself here as soon as it gets done. Please wait. All right, so that first time the domain controller happens, all those group policies are happening, everything's getting applied, so it will take it just a minute here to log in. Well, not even a minute, but a few seconds. So I'll hit pause just to skip some. Okay, so there it goes. It's starting to log in, so we'll maximize everything out. And just like that, we now have a fully operational domain controller for our Contoso domain. So everything should be good. So we're actually going to get rid of this guy now, right? We should be all done with DC1. So we're going to minimize it. We'll minimize this, and we'll switch back over to our friend the Azure Portal, because now we need to add a second virtual machine. So we're going to click Add. Same thing again. We're going to choose Windows Server, and then for Windows Server, we're going to choose R2. We're going to make sure we're in the Resource Manager, so we'll say Create. So for name, DC2 seems appropriate. For the username, I'm going to do Shane, and then I actually lost my password from the clipboard. It's very sad. Yeah, put that back in the clipboard, don't I? So put that in. All right. Visual Studio Enterprise. And then for resource group, this time we're going to say Use Existing. We're going to hit the drop down, and we're going to say DC Video. And location is going to be East US. So we'll say OK. Once again, you get to choose the size. I'm going to do the 2-core and say Select. All right, so storage accounts, using the same storage account, using the same virtual network. Right, remember, this is an important one. You got to make sure that this is set correctly. It should be the same virtual network as the other one. Then you can leave all of these settings alone. For the network security group, though, I'm going to hit the blade blowout. I don't know, blade callout, and I'm going to choose DC1. So that way we're using the same security group from a firewall point of view. No extensions. And then remember, also get your availability set. So we're going to hit the little blowout here. Okay, and so then we're going to click availability set, and then there's our DC video. So we'll click on that. All right, and then the monitoring stuff we'll leave alone. So we'll say OK. So now this page is just going to make sure that I didn't mess up. It says, hey, everything looks good. So we'll click OK. And just like that, now that VM is going to start provisioning. And so while that provisions, we'll hit pause. Okay, so DC2 finished provisioning. It automatically opened up the settings for me here when it did. So a couple of quick tweaks we're going to make to it while we're in here. We're going to click on Network Interfaces again. And then we'll click on DC2558, whatever that name might be. Auto naming is good. And so then IP addresses. And you can see it has a public IP. That's good. That's what we need. And then we're going to set a static IP address for the other one, right? Because this will be our backup DNS server. And because we're doing the whole availability set, right, we want to have 2 of all these pieces. And so we want this one to have a static IP. So we'll go ahead and hit save. And then if you remember a little bit earlier, we went into the network settings and we set up, this is a secondary DNS server. So we already done all that. Right, so we'll close out of this, close out of this, close out of this. I don't know why I like to close out of these instead of just hitting over here, but I do. All right, so that gets DC2 done. And so now all that's left is to go into DC2 and actually add it to our domain. So we're going to go ahead and hit connect. And it's going to say, hey, do you want to download that RDP? I do. So we'll say save as again. And we'll save it that same folder. That's great. So we'll say save. And then now we'll say open, and then we get the little prompt. So yeah, don't ask me again for this computer. Say connect, and then more choices, right, when you log in. And so this is the account that we just created. This is not Contoso Shane because it's not part of Contoso yet. So we'll say Shane, okay. It says, hey, you sure? I am. Yes. And then remote desktop here starts to open. All right, we want discovered machines. Yes, we do. And while it opens, because we don't really have to wait on it, we're going to say manage, add roles and features. Say next, role based, next, DC2, next. And then we want to choose Active Directory domain services again. Yep, we want to add all those features again. So next. We don't need to change the features. So next. And next. And then finally, right, don't check that, but say install. Alright, and while that processes, I'll hit pause again. And just like that, it's finished. So then we'll say close. And then as we're used to, here's a little warning sign. Promote the server domain controller. And so now we want to what? We want to add a domain controller to an existing domain. That's correct. So we're going to say contoso.com. And then we're going to say select. And we're going to put in our username of Contoso Shane, our super secret password, and click OK. It's going to look for the domains in the forest, and it's like, hey, there's your domain. Cool. So Contoso, OK. And we'll hit next. And then we want to accept all the defaults there. We're not going to make it a read-only domain controller, so we'll say next. And it's like, hey, do you want to specify DNS delegation options? We do not. We're not going to install any of those pieces. And we're going to replicate from any domain controller because there's really only one. So next. If we had a different volume, we'd move these, but we don't. So next. All of that seems good, so we'll do a next. It's going to do a prerequisite check, and it's like, hey, remember those same things from earlier? Well, we're good with all those, so we will say install. And then we know that this is going to run, and it's going to automatically reboot when it does. So we'll know it's rebooted because it'll disappear. So I'll just have this folder here, and when the video resumes, we'll pick up right here. All right, we'll see you in a second. Okay, and so now it's rebooted itself, so we're going to double click on DC2. Then we get prompted, right? We're going to click more choices again, use a different account, and Contoso Shane, and then my super secret password, right? We want to log in as Contoso Shane this time because now it is in the domain. Well, I guess it is the domain, right? The warnings pop up again. We'll deselect all that and say yes. Just like that, she loads up, and we should be ready to rock and roll. Okay, and so there you have it. Now we have two domain controllers. They're both got static IPs. The network interface in Azure is set up to use them for DNS, so that you should be able to have full availability. So this gets us in a good place. So now you could go and build forth your Azure environment with a solid domain foundation. So, and hopefully you enjoyed the video. So please click subscribe to be notified when new videos come online. Check out the different series. As always, you can hit me up on Twitter at Shane's Cows, or if you want to work on any of this together, www.boldzebras.com. All right. Well, thanks, and see you next time.